It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
Fire Friday! Good evening, Zimbabwe, and welcome to the party that's just started right here on ZiFM Sport. Barry Menandi, Chris Gray, Sean Tafirinika, and my name is Mike Madonna. What a power-packed edition of ZiFM Sport we've got lined up for you as we build up to what should be a weekend of sports action the world over. And it's a relief to say that after the coronavirus pandemic brought sport to a standstill for the better part of the last 4 months. Like I said, great show. What can you look forward to on the home front? Today marks exactly 14 days from the deadline by which ZiFA had promised to avail a relief package to cushion clubs from the financial crisis caused by the coronavirus. We'll find out who's received what, if anything, and get the thoughts of the team in studio. In international sport, Australia has welcomed the return of professional rugby as the launch of Super Rugby AU brought to an end a shutdown marked by pay disputes, boardroom upheaval, and redundancies triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. We'll give you the result of the first match that was played earlier this morning, as well as the weekend fixtures, both in Australia and in New Zealand.
In Around the World in 60, we take off in Vienna, where Lewis Hamilton says he's determined to hit the ground running as Formula One 2020 finally begins with the Austrian Grand Prix. The six-time world champion braced for the most challenging season they will ever face. In Michigan, Bryson DeChambeau and Matt Wallace enjoyed strong starts to the Rocket Mortgage Classic on a day of very low scoring at the Detroit Golf Club. In Florida, in the first 8 days of testing, 25 players have tested positive for the coronavirus. And this comes a day after Commissioner Adam Silver said a significant spread would prompt the NBA to stop the 2019-2020 season.
We'll take our Fire Friday play of the day and then dive into the beautiful game where the Premier League winning manager Jurgen Klopp refused to blame a title hangover after his Liverpool side were thrashed 4-0 by Manchester City in their first match as champions. A penalty conversion from Sergio Ramos sent Real Madrid 4 points clear at the top of La Liga with a hard-fought win over Getafe last night. And that in Serie A, Atalanta made another step towards next season's Champions League after a 2-0 win over Napoli that extended the gap between them and the chasing pack. In the Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen face Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich in the DFB Pokal final at Berlin's Olympiastadion tomorrow. All of that and so much more to look forward to on this edition of ZiFM Sport. Absolutely promises to be a cracker. But first, our power play. Hear the tunes, the sounds of Burna Boy. It's called Wonderful.
The Warriors, the Chevrons, the Cheetahs, the Mighty Warriors, and the Sables. From the pool to the track to the field, we are Team Zimbabwe. The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis.
As always, we start the show on the home front with some local news, and it's of a football variety. Today, marking exactly 14 days from the deadline by which ZiFA had promised to avail a relief package to cushion clubs from the financial crisis caused by the coronavirus. The association's president, Felton Kamambo, promised to bail out Premier Soccer League teams after ZiFA had received a stimulus package from FIFA and the Confederation of African Football, CAF. Initially, FIFA provided a relief package of $500,000, that's $500,000 to all its member associations, while CAF chipped in with about $200,000. The two organizations have in recent days approved a further payment to all football associations, with ZiFA set to get another $1.5 million from FIFA and $300,000 from CAF. Other associations in the region have already begun paying out relief aid to clubs players, coaches, referees, and women's football. It seems we are lagging behind, Barry Menandi.
Lagging behind, Michael. Yeah, that's to put it mildly. It's eye-watering, the numbers that are being shared here, because the potential they could have as an impact, not only as relief for our clubs. I'm telling you, this money could realistically transform our game. But I'm struggling from the perspective that we haven't heard anything that has tangibly gotten to the clubs, anything that's tangibly gotten to the players. We haven't even heard of a quantum of a sum that might be prepared for those various constituencies of football. But in truth, ZIFA needs to pull finger and start getting this going, because in truth, that's $2.5 million that they could potentially inject into our football. That's amazing.
Well, 2.5 million, Chris, is a lot of money that's coming through from both FIFA and CAF, and you'd have thought by now that we would have begun to see that money being put into good use, because it's the sort of amount that ZIFA or Zimbabwean football could do with to take the game forward.
Definitely. And if you take a look at this money, it's in US dollars. US dollars are incredibly valuable in the country right now, and they could make an impact, not even at just in terms of looking at the clubs and what they need to run, but looking at the individual player lives and their livelihoods. We forget that football players, I think when we look at them, we just think they do this for the passion. These are professionals. They have families to look after. And you have situations, for example, what happened at Caps United, where there was a sort of mutiny with the players. You had situations where they were having mini meal being delivered by their bus. All those scenarios can be prevented by not even all of the money that's been injected into ZIFA at the moment that they're hanging on to. We're still waiting to see what happens. You have players engaging in these money games, and you'll have ZIFA coming out to condemn the money games. But what are they doing for that particular player who desperately needs a small sum of money, like $15, $20 to get by for that particular day or that particular week? So ZIFA sitting on this money right now is having an impact on the clubs themselves and the way that they are run, and also individual player welfare is something that's incredibly important, and they should be distributing this money. We should have seen some sort of impact by now. And especially if we're saying, look, we're making inroads to make sure that we get the season started and we actually have a football season, what do these clubs have to run off of, especially in a COVID scenario where they are not likely to have crowds? And we all know that our football clubs, in terms of their financial structures and how they make their money, a lot of them solely make money on those gate takings and match day income. So what's going to happen in a scenario where they can't get started because they simply can't afford it as clubs?
Barry, we have seen Kenya move. We have read of Malawi making, payments to their clubs and to their players. We've heard the same coming out of Botswana. A lot of nations around us in the region, from leagues, some that are, smaller than our own league. In Zimbabwe, from associations that are far smaller than our own association, have already started to move in the way of providing relief to players and clubs. What's stopping ZIFA? What do you think could be the reason for this lull between the payments they have received and them dispensing this money?
Well, generally, I think we've seen how the lethargy at ZIFA in terms of actually getting things done. The COVID-19 has exposed quite a bit in our world generally, but has exposed quite a bit about where our football is and our football administration is, because even their response to COVID-19, they haven't been on the front foot in terms of trying to get football back on the map and get football back playing in whatever safe protocol that there is. Tourism has even run ahead of football, which is shocking. So I think this also just falls in line. It joins the queue of many things to do that aren't being done over at ZIFA House. It's a tragedy that they're in a time where they had one job. All they had to do, they were sitting at home. They merely had to just plan. They haven't done that.
Barry, I want you to just throw in your thoughts as well on this, because, whilst they're dragging their feet, Could the situation actually get worse? Because the ZIFA and Premier Soccer League Medical Committee is reported that yesterday they gave a very grim report on the chances of the game getting back underway in Zimbabwe amidst the challenges, of course, of COVID-19. The PSL had provisionally set an August or September date for a possible start of the season. But now with that report, football may well be delayed until an even further date later on in the year, which means that the clubs suffer, the players continue to suffer, the game suffers, and this damage may be irreparable.
Yeah, and my disappointment with that is not necessarily the contents of the report, and as it's quite rightly pointed out in the report that it was a grim report. My disappointment is the fact that the report is coming in a full 3.5 months since we've gone into lockdown and gone into the protocol of trying to slow the spread of COVID-19. I think it's unfair on clubs, it's unfair on football as a whole that we've gone so long and now we then get the report that, it may not happen. It going on longer, it not happening at all in terms of a restart is detrimental to football in Zimbabwe, detrimental to the future of football in Zimbabwe. So I think that there needs to be a bit of sharpening, a bit of a back and forth between the medical committee, the football people, if we have any football people, that they all put their heads together and see just how this can be done. I have some ideas. I'm sure there are people out there who also have ideas. You guys have ideas. Why are we not getting together on a Zoom call, whatever the case may be, and trying to plot a way forward for our football and really seeing if there's no chance for us to get back on the field of play?
Well, Chris, if that day ever comes where football will have to get back underway, it will mean that there'll have to be a series of rigorous tests, as we have seen in the major leagues in Europe as they've got back underway, led by the Bundesliga and then, of course, the Italian League, La Liga, as well as the English Premier League. Testing has been at the heart of the return to action. And if you take a look at some of the prices that are being thrown around in Zimbabwe, one test kit, for example, $65, meaning that if you are to do a single round of tests for a squad with 30 players and 10 officials, you could be paying upwards of $10,000 every week. Our clubs simply can't afford that.
They simply can't afford that, and they especially can't afford it if they're not going to be receiving these amounts of money that are supposed to be coming in from ZIFA. Ideally, I would like a scenario where ZIFA is actually the ones who take up this cost and say, you know what, the players will be tested, this is what we're going to do week in, week out, and it's on the back of ZIFA that these tests take place. In terms of our peers, in fact, any football clubs across the country, they simply cannot afford it. And if this is the scenario in which we're to return, it's not going to happen.
Well, it's going to be a challenging one for ZIFA and the Premier Soccer League to navigate. When does football return in Zimbabwe? How does it return? Can we afford its return? Barry Menandi has suggested an indaba. It's a word that we throw around in Zimbabwe and we love to use, but this time I think it's appropriate. Get the best minds, the best football administrators, the thinkers of our time together. It can be Zoom, it can be whatever application that you are using, just to share ideas on how best possible the game can return to Zimbabwe. Because one thing certainly obvious, that the longer and longer we go without football action in the country, the more and more our football suffers. This is ZiFM Sport on a Friday. We've got a great show lined up for you. Formula One returns this weekend. Rugby was back in New Zealand, has been back for a while. It's now back in Australia. And of course, in the beautiful game, Man City fans will be cock-a-hoop 4 past the champions, but 20 points between them. Is it a true reflection of the quality between the two teams? We'll discuss that in the beautiful game.
Hi, this is Benjamin Locke. I'm on the Zimbabwe Davis Cup team, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
All right, your local sports news roundup now, starting with tennis. Zimbabwe will have to wait until next year for their Davis Cup World Group 2 tie against China. This follows the announcement by the International Tennis Federation, the ITF, to push forward their events to 2021 because of the coronavirus pandemic. Posting on their website, the International Federation reached the decision to move the Davis Cup finals, World Group 1 and World Group 2 ties and the regional Group 3 and 4 events. This followed a 3-month review of the considerable logistical and regulatory challenges which have arisen as a result of the pandemic. On to rugby news now. Sables captain Hilton Mudariki will have to be patient with little movement in the market due to COVID-19 following the expiry of his contract with Rugby Football Union Championship side Jersey Reds. The 28-year-old scrum half who led the Sables to Victoria Cup triumph last year joined the English second-tier team in 2018 on a 2-year contract which has come to an end. He is one of the players cleared by Jersey Reds, including Leroy Atalifo, Alec Cleary, Will Horner and Liam Howley. But with the most countries having cancelled rugby activities, Mudariki can only wait before deciding his next move. We'll wrap it up with Alex News, where only 193 athletes from 58 member states qualified to receive grants from the Athlete Welfare Fund, availed by World Athletics in April to cushion professional athletes from hardship caused by COVID-19 pandemic. According to a press release from World Athletics, each athlete will be given a once-off grant of $3,000 from the $600,000 fund. World Athletics said the International Athletics Federation had received 261 eligible applications by the May the 31st deadline, and the applications were evaluated by the IAF to ensure they met the eligibility criteria under the oversight of an expert working group chaired by the World Athletics President, Sebastian Coe.
Hi, this is Mike Madoda, and you can catch me and the team for all the latest breaking news out of the world of sport, local as well as international, on your favorite station, my station, your station, ZiFM. We are Z-Team on ZiFM Sport.
Z. From the front of the grid to the back of the net, it's ZiFM Sport. International Sports News Roundup, where the world comes out to play.
As Mike pointed out, rugby news, Super Rugby to be specific, but we're not talking New Zealand just for now. We're talking about Australia now. They have welcomed the return of professional rugby as the launch of Super Rugby AU brought to an end a shutdown marked by pay disputes, boardroom upheaval and redundancies triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. The country's 4 Super Rugby teams and Perth-based Western Force will play in a full home and away competition, culminating in a 2-week playoff. The competition kicked off at Brisbane's Lang Park this morning when the Queensland Reds took on the New South Wales Waratahs in a clash of the country's 2 traditional rugby powerhouses. And it was the Reds that claimed a hard-fought victory of 32-26. This is the first win for the Reds over the Waratahs since 2013, breaking an 11-match losing streak. Before we get to the rugby proper, so great to see rugby back in Australia, Chris, and also with fans in the stadium.
Definitely. I think they've done a really good job in terms of getting back on track. And I think it was also because of the pressure that they were under. You talked about those pay disputes, the boardroom upheavals, and this is all triggered, of course, by the weight of the financial implications of the coronavirus pandemic. So it's great to see them back with the fans in the stadium, meaning they reap all the benefits of getting back into action. And this bodes well for rugby across the world, where we'll soon start to see other countries as well come to the fore and actually get back into action.
Mikey, the Reds snapping a 11-match losing streak to the Waratahs, winning that match 32-26. The break, perhaps a bit of a leveler?
Yeah, a bit of a leveler, Barry, because teams are returning at different levels of intensity and not necessarily reflecting where they were before the shutdown. 4 months is a very long time, Barry, for any professional to be in active for. So there's going to be, I think, a period of transition where some sides need at least a couple of match days to get up to speed. And I think we've seen something similar in New Zealand where the Chiefs, I think, suffered as a result of the break in play. And we saw in that game in which they lost against the Canterbury Crusaders last week, very unlucky to lose to a controversial decision. But for the 80 minutes, you've got to say that the Chiefs looked a better side than the Crusaders. So the Chiefs are coming into it. But the problem is it's after 3 or so rounds of action. And we might see a similar thing as well in Australia, where the likes of the Reds, the Reds on any given day would have probably lost to the New South Wales Waratahs, but they managed managed to do the business here. And I think the difference was their ability to get over the whitewash. They scored 4 tries compared to the 2 by the New South Wales Waratahs. So whereas the Waratahs were scoring in 3s when it came to their penalty kicks and so forth, the Queensland Reds were able to get over the whitewash and were scoring in 5s, and that ultimately was the difference. 32-26, close encounter. 8 points in rugby is basically just one play and a penalty. So it's a very close encounter, this one, and the Reds will be chuffed that they managed to get over the line.
Indeed. And tomorrow, Super Rugby AU continues with the Canberra Brumbies opening up their Super Rugby AU campaign against the Melbourne Rebels. Skipper Alan Alatoa will join Folau Fainga and James Flipper in an all-Wallabies front row, with Darcy Swain and Murray Douglas making up the tight 5. Vice-Captain Tom Cusack has been recalled to open side flanker and will be joined by Rob Valentini and Pete Samu in the loose trio. Brumbies taking on the Rebels. Let me stay with you, Michael. The Brumbies, going back a few years, this was one of the top teams in Super Rugby generally, but have fallen away a little bit. In Australia, your thoughts?
Yeah, they failed to manage the transition, Barry. They had a lot of really good players. You know, Steve Larkham. They had the Zimbabwe-linked George Gregan.
Yeah.
You know,
Zimbabwe-linked. I love the way you put that.
Yeah. Because we all love to claim him. He is a Zimbo, to be honest. He's a Musarurwa. So he is a Zimbo. So we love to claim these players, and rightfully so, because we haven't enjoyed a lot of glory at that level. So any Zimbabwean who's doing well, we'll take him, even if they play for us. So they didn't manage the transition, Barry, and they still remain a very competitive side, the ACT Brumbies. But one of the things that they suffer from is the fact that they're actually located in the capital city, Canberra. Canberra is not the biggest city. It's not exactly the most metropolitan of cities in Australia. So the players that love the lifestyle prefer to be playing, of course, in Melbourne. And of course, representing Queensland, they prepare to be based in other states. And that has always been sort of like a downside for the ACT Brumbies. It's a bit like FC Platinum here in Zimbabwe when it comes to football. There would be a far bigger team if they were located in one of the 2 main urban centers. Imagine if FC Platinum was a Harare team with all the success that they've enjoyed over the last decade. They would now be a huge team. But the fact that they're located in Zishamane sometimes just does them down in terms of them being an attractive proposition for certain players. Certain players don't want to go be based in a small town. And even in English football, we have seen certain teams suffer from that. Sometimes teams like Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, they suffer from that because they're out in the northwest, they're out in an industrial region. It's not as glamorous as being in London. And the London teams have got an advantage when they're trying to lure players from the continent, players from Italy, Spain, etc. Those players find London more of an attraction. Right. It's an easier place for them to go and stay than to be out on Merseyside or in Lancashire, Manchester. So it's the same thing with the ACT Brumbies. They have to work a lot harder to attract their players to come and play out in the capital.
So the Brumbies are boasting some great talent, but hamstrung a little bit because of their location. They take on the Melbourne Rebels. They boast lots of experience in the shape and form of veteran Matt Tomua. He'll be celebrating his 100th Super Rugby game this weekend. There's also action across the pond in New Zealand, where round 4 of Super Rugby Aotearoa ignites with the Battle of the South from Forsyth Bar Stadium in Dunedin tomorrow morning, as the Otago Highlanders go up against the Canterbury Crusaders. The Hurricane on Sunday, All Black star Geordie Barrett will make his return to action when the Wellington Hurricanes tackle the Waikato Chiefs in Hamilton. The 22-year-old has been nursing a shoulder injury for the first 2 rounds of the Super Rugby Aotearoa competition, with saw Chase Tiatia operate as fullback. The Hurricanes are coming off a bye, and assistant coach Chris Gibbs told the team's official website that there's a lot on the line.
Look, you could look at it that it's not quite working out for us, all that, but we're not looking at it like that. It's only 2 games in, and we're a great team, and with a great environment and culture, and the boys are working hard for each other, and that's all we can ask as management, as coaches. But we're not far off, and anyone takes us lightly, they'll you're the year in peril.
Z. A lot on the line for the Hurricanes. They're always traditionally a competitive side, and I don't see them being any different in this matchup against the Chiefs. The Chiefs themselves struggling in this competition, Chris.
Definitely, and you probably think they'll fancy their chances in this particular scenario. The Chiefs desperately need a win here, but I'm pretty sure that the Hurricanes will be able to take them on and pick up those points.
Hi, this is Alexandra Maseko, and I'm the national basketball team captain, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z. Around the world in 60 seconds. International sports news.
Around the World in 60 is proudly brought to you by DSTV. We take off in Vienna, where Lewis Hamilton says he's determined to hit the ground running as Formula 1 2020 finally begins with the Austrian Grand Prix. The six-time world champion braced for the most challenging season we will ever face. He said Hamilton is on the verge of becoming the most successful Formula 1 driver of all time, just 7 wins and 1 title adrift of Michael Schumacher's all-time records. But to do so, he will have to defeat his rivals during a season which will be far different to what was expected earlier this year. We head over to Michigan, where Bryson DeChambeau and Matt Wallace enjoyed strong starts to the Rocket Mortgage Classic on a day of very low scoring at the Detroit Golf Club. DeChambeau and Wallace were among 7 players to open with 6 under 66s, which left them just 1 shot off the lead, jointly held by Doc Redman, Kevin Kistner and Scott Starlings. Informed Tyrrell Hatton fired a confident 68 along with RBC Heritage champion Webb Simpson, while Ricky Fowler's response to back-to-back missed cuts was an encouraging 67. We touched down in Florida, where in the first 8 days of testing, 25 players have tested positive for the coronavirus. This comes a day after Commissioner Adam Silver said a significant spread would prompt the NBA to stop the 2019-2020 season. Teams are scheduled to travel to Orlando on the 7th of July for the start of formal training camp. The NBA is scheduled to restart the 2019-2020 regular season with 22 teams at the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex near Orlando.
Hi, I'm Vario's coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference. Z. The big leagues, the big teams, the big players. The beautiful game on ZiFM Sport. All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back here's Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudent. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
Exactly 1 week after Liverpool were crowned champions, the Reds playing their first match as champions, and it was against the team that they usurped from the throne, Man City. And a bit of a reality check for the newly crowned champions, and their manager Jurgen Klopp has refused to blame a title hangover after his Liverpool side was thrashed by the former champions Man City 4-0. The Reds endured a sobering return to action as City, the side whose Premier League crown they took last week, served a ruthless reminder of the enduring quality at the Etihad Stadium. The outstanding Kevin De Bruyne began the rout from the penalty spot before further goals from the equally impressive Raheem Sterling and Phil Foden before half-time. And then an own goal from Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain completed the scoring in the second half. After finally ending a 30-year title drought and losing just one other match all season, Liverpool could perhaps be excused an off night, but manager Jurgen Klopp insists his side was still on top of their game.
Attitude-wise, are we really? Is the game important to us? How will we go? And I saw a brilliant attitude. I saw boys who were fighting with all they have. We didn't behave like somebody who became chairman a week ago. So it's not important. So that was all good. We lacked fluidity, yeah, and that's for sure. And in some situations, 50-50, they were quicker than us in mind. That's true as well. And that's what they use. Then the pitch becomes big immediately. So first goal, we leave Joe felt like 5 minutes alone in a challenge with Sterling. There must be a second player. I think before the second goal we lose the ball. The third goal could have been which makes no sense, but can happen. But just against City, you have their massive problems. They used their chances, not all, but a lot, and we didn't. So if City was a 100% deserved winner, of course, today, but like a 5-3 or something like that, I would have been possible as well. So it doesn't make the things better. But now it's a 4-0, and we have to take that, and we do that, and that's it.
4-0, the statistic that ultimately matters to Man City, and by that scoreline, very impressive, Barry. But you take a look at the stats on this game, Jurgen Klopp may be onto something.
Yeah, he may be right in terms of the team showing up, but I would only differ with him from a sense that there was a slight hint of a hangover, and that is in one area, and that is in the efficiency stakes. Because you look at the chances created by Liverpool in that game, you look at their overall play, everything was on point apart from their efficiency in defense and their efficiency in attack. When they created chances, they didn't take them. And then in momentary lapses, in moments like Joe Gomez versus Sterling, they went to sleep and didn't really focus as much as they could have, and they were punished for it. Yes, 4-0 is harsh. Yes, it could have been worse. But certainly, Liverpool came to the party, came to the game, but was a little bit sleepy in the efficiency stakes.
Chris, Man City is serving a timely reminder of the quality that is in their ranks. And this is a team that, when it's on top of its game, can dispatch even the best of sides.
Definitely, and I think it was just almost foreboding of what's to come next season. I think the players are a little bit riled up right now that Liverpool managed to actually get away with the title this season. So I think that there was a little bit of vengeance in this game as well, and I think that's what contributed to them actually pulling it all the way and making that 4-0 win.
Foreboding for next season, Barry, is that not sometimes? I think, listen, I've heard a lot of analysis after this game, and I've thought to myself, hang on, you know what, I know Liverpool has been thumped 4-0, but there's been a lot of talk about next season. But just 1 week ago, this is the same Man City side that lost to Chelsea. And that same Chelsea side, just the day before yesterday, lost to West Ham, who are just 2 points above the relegation zone. So are we reading too much into a one-off match?
Yes, we are. We're reading too much into it, but we're also reading one-sidedly. Because we're talking about the fact that, yes, Man City is a phenomenal football team, and I agree, they are stunning. You can see it when they're on top of their game. But I think this season has its peculiarities. Finally got it out.
English.
Yes, it has its peculiarities, and we have to legislate for those. The things like empty stadiums, the whole protocol around COVID-19. So let's hold on to next season. Next season will take care of itself. Remember, as good as Man City is, they played a red team last night that's actually now, 20 points ahead of them. So that cannot be written off, especially in the same season that we're talking about. Liverpool, fantastic football team, whether it was a hangover, whether it was lethargy, whether they were just blown off the park. They were beaten last night, soundly beaten. And it happens in football. One of three results: win, draw, or loss. Let's move on. Let's see what happens in the next fixture and see if the Liverpool side that we saw throughout the preceding 31, 32 games is the same one that then shows up in the next fixture.
Chris, has this result come at the right time for Jurgen Klopp, losing now by such a heavy margin? I think being a timely reminder to the German that, you know what, hang on, Man City could be good for a challenge next season. This game coming now means that he's got all of 6 matches left this season and a pre-season to try and rectify the mistakes of last night and to try and work on what would be an improved product for next season. Is this the result coming at perhaps a better time than, for example, if they played each other in, let's say, the Community Shield, which is the traditional curtain raiser, and then Liverpool is thumped at a time when they can't actually make any corrections because the season is starting?
Definitely. It's brilliant timing from the perspective that, first of all, there are no consequences really for that loss for Liverpool anymore. They're already the champions, and it's not as bad as it would have been, say, 2 weeks ago. That would have made a more significant impact in terms of that title run. And also, they have time now to tweak if Jurgen Klopp needs to do anything in terms of buying players, if he needs anything to do in terms of restructuring how they play. All of that he can manage to do within the next 5 games and without any consequences anymore. So he has time now to tweak, to play around and to see what works, and also to then lurch that into the next season, into pre-season. So I think it's come at the perfect time where there are no consequences for anything really that happens in sport.
Well, Chris has talked about maybe needed to improve the squad, Barry, and there's talk this morning, widespread newspaper reports that Thiago Alcantara is the signing that Liverpool is about to wrap up from Bayern Munich. And he's a quality operator, because if there's an area that Liverpool needs options and needs quality and world-class quality, it's midfield, because with an operator like Thiago Alcantara, they've got a player who can match Kevin De Bruyne in terms of quality.
Absolutely, and you can tell it. You can see it in the way in which Kevin De Bruyne carried himself on the field yesterday, the way he's conducted his season throughout this season. If Liverpool can match that sort of creative ability, you can see patches of it with Naby Keita, especially when he came on last night. But what you need is somebody who is going to command, number one, a position in the 11. Number two, somebody who's going to be able to deliver on a regular basis. And Thiago Alcantara certainly excites me from a fan perspective and excites me from a punditry perspective, on the basis of what he can and has delivered in various iterations when he's played football, whether at Barca, Bayern, and now, hopefully, Liverpool.
And of course, a very experienced midfielder with an illustrious career behind him, looking for a fresh challenge. He's got 1 season left on his contract at Bayern Munich, and the talk is that Jurgen Klopp could snap him up for £32 million. And the only talk that's left between the sides are whether Liverpool can pay the entire fee in one installment, or whether Bayern Munich is going to allow them to be creative about how they pay that £32 million fee. So Thiago Alcantara looking like he's headed to Merseyside. There was other action last night, just one match, and Jose Mourinho in all sorts of trouble. Chris, 3-1, thumped by Sheffield United. We talked about Jose Mourinho having all his players back. Harry Kane is back. Son is back. His best players are back. The results have not changed in terms of inconsistency. He looks like he's a manager who's struggling for ideas. And I think Jose Mourinho, his methodology doesn't work anymore. I think he's not the right guy for Tottenham, definitely, because if you look at the fact that before we came back from the COVID break, we were talking about the fact that, we had a scenario where he had those injuries. We're talking about the injuries, we're talking about the impact that's had on Tottenham, and they had some patchy results. But now where he's got all of his players back, where he has his Harry Kane, and he's able to actually do a lot with that particular team, and he's still failing. And further to that, he's whining about VAR. For me, I think it's just testament to the fact that he's not the right guy for the job. I don't think him and his methodology, I think it's aged out now. Okay, Jose Mourinho, has he reached his sell-by date? Well, we'll find out. The results seem to indicate that, because since he was appointed, he has lost 7 times as Premier League manager at Tottenham Hotspur, and that is a lot of goals. Sheffield United were struggling. They've been thumped in all their matches since the return. The one match they win versus Jose Mourinho's Tottenham Hotspur. Premier League fixtures this weekend: Norwich versus Brighton, Leicester City versus Crystal Palace, United will entertain Bournemouth at Old Trafford, Chelsea will welcome Watford for the short trip into London and into Stamford Bridge, Burnley versus Sheffield United. The Northeast will see Newcastle United play West Ham at St James's Park, whilst Liverpool will play marvellous Nakamba's Aston Villa, looking to bounce back from that 4-0 mauling by City. Southampton versus Manchester City, and then in the pick of the fixtures, Wolves will take on Arsenal. And you've got to say, Barry, that Wolves have been going about their business quietly, efficiently. It's the one team that no one seems to mention or talk about as far as Champions League qualification is concerned, and yet they are sitting right there with the same points as Manchester United.
Yeah, you could almost say they take on the persona of their manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, a man who he's the quiet man of football. He doesn't shout at the top of his voice. He's not going to be ostentatious. He just carries on with his business quietly and efficiently, and that's exactly how his football club is performing as well. And right now, they're in contention for a definitely a European place, but also in contention for an outright Champions League place. And in truth, it's going to be a tough ask for a Arsenal side that is patchy at best, struggling for form at worst.
But this is an Arsenal side, though, Chris, that despite our criticism of it, they've responded very well to that criticism this past week with two results that they've got, and they are on a good run of form. The question will be, can they maintain it? Because the Wolves is the ultimate test, isn't it, if you want to show that you're making progress?
Definitely. I was going to say that Wolves is the ultimate challenge. I think in terms of how they play and how intense that they play, I think if you think a team is now coming into this good run, are they actually performing? Are the players up to scratch? Wolves is the ultimate test of that. And if Arsenal can mount a significant challenge against Wolves and manage to walk away with the points, then I think we can definitely say that they're on a good run and they're on that positive trajectory. If they do lose to Wolves, though, then I think that says a lot more about Arsenal than Wolves.
The league that makes football oh so beautiful, where artistry and strokes of genius are the order of any day, where the game is played with a smile and the little master creates his magic.
It's Lionel Messi!
All the news from the Spanish La Liga on ZiFM Sport.
The goal the world wants it!
In Spain, a penalty conversion from Sergio Ramos sent Real Madrid 4 points clear at the top of La Liga with a hard-fought win over Getafe. Real looked as if they were going to be frustrated until Matias Oliveira fouled Dani Carvajal, with Ramos stepping up to score his 21st consecutive penalty. Getafe, who are in contention for a Champions League place, started well, and Thibaut Courtois had to make 3 saves in the opening 12 minutes. The derby was a physical battle at times, with 10 players booked in total. Very attritional match between Getafe and Real Madrid. Earlier, so Real Sociedad stayed in the race for European qualification by winning 2-1 at home to Espanyol, who stayed bottom, now 10 points adrift off safety. Osasuna won 2-0 away at Aiba. Your La Liga weekend fixtures look like this. Atletico Madrid takes on Mallorca. Celta Vigo hosts Real Betis, while Real Valladolid takes on Alaves. It's Granada versus Valencia, Athletic Club versus Real Madrid, Espanyol versus Leganes, Osasuna host Getafe, and Barcelona will travel to Villarreal. Just talking about Real Madrid, they seem like they've been the form team since the restart. They have been getting consistent results. They're still on 100% since the restart. But it was a tough ask last night, Chris. It's requiring that 79th minute penalty for them to get the 1-0 victory that they sorely required.
Definitely. And I think that's what's going to make the difference for them, is that ability to just grind out the results and get the points where they need them in order to maintain that gap that they have now, 4 points between them and Barcelona. So what they've managed to do since the restart is not necessarily be a significantly better team than Barcelona, but what they've just done is manage to chip in those goals and grind out results match in, match out. Atalanta made another step towards next season's Champions League after a 2-0 Serie A win over Napoli that extended the gap between them and the chasing pack. Goals from Mario Pasalic and Robin Gosens early in the second half broke Napoli's resistance at an all but empty Giuseppe Stadium and put Atalanta on 60 points in 4th place and the final Champions League spot with 9 matches remaining. Serie A kind of coming to a place where we see how things are going to be ending up, Barry, and Napoli definitely deserving that position in the Champions League.
Yeah, I would say deserving. I think they've had a good season. Look, in Atalanta themselves have been become part of the fabric of European football, and they want to maintain that, and it's good to see them doing that.
Your Serie A fixtures this weekend: Juventus versus Torino, Sassuolo takes on Lecce, Lazio versus AC Milan, Inter Milan versus Bologna, Brescia will take on Hellas Verona, Cagliari versus Atalanta, Parma versus Fiorentina, Sampdoria will be up against Spal, Udinese versus Genoa, and Napoli versus Roma.
Well, nearly time to say goodbye, but just a reminder that there's a big game in Germany, and the venue will be the Olympiastadion in Berlin. It's the DFB Pokal final. That's Germany's version of the FA Cup final, and it'll see the champions Bayern Munich taking on Bayer Leverkusen, who narrowly missed out on Champions League football. So there's a lot more than just a cup at stake. There's pride at stake. Bayern Munich winning the league by 13 points. Leverkusen will try and make it as hard as possible. So this is one of the results that we'll carry on the show on Monday, as well as the results from all the other major leagues, the Premier League, La Liga, as well as Serie A. Enjoy your weekend, Zimbabwe. Have a great one, but more importantly, stay safe.
May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Menandi, out.
And it's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
The biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.